Hey, this is Wake Up Witnesses with Jake and Steph.
Hey.
And today we wanted to go back and talk about the letter that Jake had sent to the organization.
Yeah, the letter that we talked about in the last video that I sent to the organization, the headquarters, and the elders came and they had sent the elders there to kind of interrogate me, which I didn't really know they were there for in the beginning. So the letter goes like this. It's in part it says, I have asked the elders of my congregation the following question, but did not feel the response was adequate nor logical. Would you please assist me? How are we to understand changes in doctrine when conceding to past doctrine may have resulted in health problems and or death, and when unrepentant violation of past doctrine may have resulted in disfellowshipping? Even if judicial action was not required, Jehovah's Witnesses were taught that such actions were sins against Jehovah and prohibited in the scriptures. Example, organ transplant. I give some references after all these examples. So organ transplant, blood fractions, procedures involving the medical use of your own blood, not fighting rape equals consenting to fornication or adultery, consenting oral sex within marriage is porneia, homosexuality or bestiality does not allow for scriptural divorce, etc. The answer given to me by the elders was along the lines of Christians today not knowing why Jehovah allows such things to take place. Direction from the Watchtower is described by statements such as God's channel of communication, and it is vital that we appreciate this fact and respond to the directions of the slave as we would to the voice of God, because it is his provision. And just FYI, that's the Watchtower of 57, 615, page 370, paragraph 7. That's a good one. Continuing on. And would not a failure to respond to direction from God through his organization really indicate a rejection of divine rulership? Therefore, since the decisions Christians make may involve life or death, and Jehovah's standards never really change, how can we be sure that the direction we receive from the Watchtower today represents Jehovah's true thoughts on such serious matters? If a brother or sister had disagreed with the position on blood fractions or organ transplants in the past, would it have been justifiable for them to act according to their own understanding? I feel pity for Jehovah's Witnesses who may have lost their lives or the lives of loved ones, suffer medical difficulties, including loved ones, were disfellowshipped, including loved ones, or had tormented consciences because of abiding with doctrines that were later changed. Furthermore, if a person was disfellowshipped in the past for violating a doctrine that later changed and showed their action was not definitely a sin, would that person need to display repentance over their past sin to be reinstated? And then, it's like a side note, but I'd also asked them, I said, is there any historical reference showing that Christians were given the choice of eat blood sausage or die in the arena? I have read the applicable text by Tertullian along with some historical research and do not see any references to Christians being given that particular choice. So they never answered that, and I just thought it was interesting how they said that was a historical fact, and I've never found anything to back up that Christians were given that option.
So just reading it now, I mean, I haven't looked at this letter in a few years, and I read it recently, and I was just really sad at how naive we both were, because we really expected biblical answers from them. We were like, we're so confused. How come this is happening? And we thought that they were going to send us, a letter in the mail answering everything and reassuring us and, kind of rebuilding our faith back. And instead they sent the elders for the witch hunt that we talked about in our last video. And we were just so surprised and disappointed.
I remember one problem that one of the elders said that he had, or a concern he had, was where I said, I feel pity for Jehovah's Witnesses who may have lost their lives or the lives of loved ones or suffered medical difficulties or were disfellowshipped for the doctrines that later changed. And he was like, that concerns us. Why would you feel pity? Because the Watchtower has made it clear that you're showing loyalty to Jehovah. I mean, if it later changes, you were showing loyalty, so you should be happy.
Yeah. So then they wanted to meet with you again? They called you?
Yeah, like we said in the last video, they had ultimately said, well, do you trust the faithful and discreet slave? I didn't answer, and that had been the second time I had met with them. One was when I first asked them these questions. The second was regarding the letter. Then I got an email and said, hey, we'd like to schedule another meeting with you. And we, yeah, and I was like, I said, and I was still actually believed quite a bit in the whole faithful discreet slave thing at that time. I was just very confused. And I had seen online where those meetings go, that they kind of will almost like push you out of the organization once you have that many doubts. So I just said no.
And then the circuit overseer.
Yeah, the circuit overseer. I was going about my business still like a very regular meeting attender and service and everything. And the circuit overseer is a very nice circuit overseer, actually, overall. He came back into town, and then he had heard about my situation, I guess, and he said, I'd like to, did he get his questions answered? And the elders then asked me, like privately, did you get the questions you had answered? I said, no, not really. Then he met with me in service, like a car group of him, 2 other elders, and then me. And his explanation was really strange. I was like intimidated, so I wasn't really going to say anything to his explanation being wrong or anything.
Well, you want to be careful, because anything you say, they can make, you have to be really careful what you say, because they might make a judicial committee and then, decide that you shouldn't be part of the congregation, since, they might think that you're spreading apostasy or that you have too many doubts.
Yeah, this is the CEO. Okay.
So for any non-witnesses watching, the CO is the circuit overseer.
Oh.
He kind of goes on a tour of a certain group of congregations, and he spends a week with them. But he's directed by the branch, which is the headquarters of the witnesses. Just using the cult terminology sometimes knocks me down. People don't understand what we're talking about unless we explain it, and you don't realize that you're using cult terminology.
Yeah,
so,
I'll have to be more clear. Thanks for doing
for
that.
non-witnesses, feel free to chime in and ask questions if you don't understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, but in other words, he was like a big shot. He was the guy that all the elders listened to when he came around.
Well, here's an example. If you're going to the meeting when the CO was going to be there, I've had different sisters say that they would wear their nicest dress because the CO is going to be there. You show up an extra 15 minutes early for the meeting because the CO is going to be there. You put extra time into your appearance and preparation for your parts on the meeting because the CO is going to be there and you want to make a good impression.
Yeah. So meeting with the CO out in service, he gave me a really weird explanation for the questions I had. He said, do you ever go past the speed limit? And I said, yes, of course, because most people go a couple miles sometimes after the speed limit. And he said, well, does the organization tell us to obey all traffic laws? And I said, yes. And he kind of was like, okay, well, you don't obey the organization and everything. So in summary, he was kind of saying we can't keep all the commandments of the Watchtower, so don't worry about it. It was just really vague.
Yeah, because these are life or death matters. It's not 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. It's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it's not answering whether or not it's okay to disobey them. Because he's saying, oh, you're going to disobey pretty much because you're imperfect, right? Is that, you think, what he was implying?
Yeah, maybe. It was just strange because so much emphasis is put on in the literature that the witnesses have to the members of being obedient, obedient in the small things, obedient in everything. And then here he's telling us oh, well, stuff comes up and you're not obedient.
Yeah, kind of like it was a free pass, but at the same time, it means your life or death. So.
Yeah, which actually makes sense, the free pass thing, because nowadays, from what I hear, it's as long as you just kind of say you're sorry and submit to their authority, whatever you do can be forgiven by them. So that was very strange. And yeah, a common question we hear from witnesses that are just starting to wake up, or even on our YouTube section, we had a comment regarding this, is where do we go from here, or where else would we go besides the witnesses? Who else has the truth?
Or maybe it's the closest thing, so I'm just going to stick with it for now.
That's a very sad thing to hear, especially if somebody knows of all the wrongdoing or the wrong teachings within the organization.
It really reminds us of an abusive relationship. If you're being mistreated in a relationship, do you line up a new prospective spouse before you leave?
No. If you're being abused or if you see something very bad is happening, you just leave. You don't have to have
somebody else lined up. You just know that you're being mistreated and that you need to get out of it. And that's what you do. And that's what's healthy. That's the healthy choice.
Yeah.
What we've really done is turn to our community. You can join Facebook groups or community groups, find a charity, find something that you enjoy and start giving back, because it's no longer us versus them. Like we were always taught, oh, it's just witnesses against the worldly people. Well, it's no longer that. We're all in this together. We have friends who are Methodist, Baptist, atheists, agnostic. We've got some friends that are Mormon. You know, that doesn't bother me that we all believe differently. You join together as humankind and you enjoy each other's company, and you build community. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll come up with another one soon.
Bye.